my lovelies, come and doodle on some clay with me. It's called Sgraffito, but I prefer doodling. No plan, just doodle, doodle, doodle. So I threw these vessels a number of days ago, possibly even last week actually. Yes, I think it was a week ago. And then I covered them in black underglaze. See, the clay is a white clay body, but I covered them in black underglaze. Now, normally I would use engobe, but I happen to have this huge, I think it's over a gallon of black underglaze, and I don't rightly use it for anything else. So I have Sgraffito with it before, so let's do it again. And I've chosen to leave the insides white. Now, the reason I have black on white is because Sgraffito is the removal of one surface to reveal another. So when it's finished, you'll have this glossy black pot with white decoration that's carved through. Now, you want to be carving at just the right time. Too dry and there's too much dust. Too wet and it's sticky and your carving tools just sort of drag through and they leave all the little gribblies on the surface. I'm a bit concerned I've left these a little too late, but I have had them wrapped up in plastic with a pillowcase over the top so there's no condensation building up in there. So we'll see. We won't really know until I start carving, but I'm going to keep them wrapped up until that time. So let's have a look at my setup so that you can do something similar. I'll show you my tools first. One of my favorite things is this shaving brush, and this one's got a nice metal handle and some good grip on there. And what I like about this is as I'm carving through, I can brush the gribblies away. It's nice and soft here, but it's got enough stiffness here to really make those clay crumbs move aside. And with the gripper, it's really nice to use. So this is one of my favorite Sgraffito tools. My other favorite is this one here. And this is the first tool I ever used in Sgraffito way back at art school days. And it has a little tiny sharpened, can you see that little tiny sharpened shovel at one end, and then a brush at the other. So you scratch and brush, scratch and brush. I tend to not use the brush as much because I have this one, but I still do like this shovel one. And these are probably the most affordable Sgraffito tools. And when I see them, I have a bunch of them, trying to see where they're from. They're Kempfer, of course they are. They're Kempfer tools. And you can actually replace these little blades as well. And I just bought a whole herd of them, so I have those. Some of the other Kempfer tools are these little modeling tools. So they come in different shapes, and they've got diamond shape ends, square ends, round ends, and they've got a blade on both sides. So they're nice for different designs. Then Handy Hubby, on one of his trips, brought back these lovely diamond core bits. I haven't used these much. This Kempfer one has been my go-to, but I'm going to use these a bit more today. And then I brought these in from my other studio room, and they're those little ball ones. I'm not sure I'm going to use them, but I just felt I needed them there maybe to do a sketch. And I have these also, I call them pencils, but they're actually, what are they for? I think this one is for scoring on card or paper. It's got a very rounded metal tip. And this one has an extremely sharp metal tip because it was for scoring on rocks when I was doing lapidary. So I think I've got these for if I want to sketch out the design. I've got my old faithfuls because we all need our old faithfuls. I've got my yay Handy Hubby bought me another gift. My favorite brush. I got a couple of steel kidneys here, or ribs as well. Don't know that I'll use those, but you can't go anywhere without those in my opinion. Of course, a little bowl of water and a sponge. Highly unlikely I'll use that because you really don't want to add water when you're doing Sgraffito design, because the water's going to blur your edges and it's going to blur the underglaze into the soft clay and so on and so forth. I also have some extra underglaze ready to go, just in case I see a thin spot or whatever. I've got that handy. I have my banding wheel. That's another thing, how can you exist without one? So here is my setup. There are my carving tools, my fabulous brush, my little bowl of water, the underglaze, and then these two containers are literally to stop the gardener's tray from moving. So this is just a tarpaulin, and so it folds away when you don't need it, and it's got this wonderful press stud button system that means you can fold up the corners, and it's how I will catch all the gribblies so they don't end up anywhere else. I'll be sgraffitoing a number of vessels here today, but I have sped it up for you because this is hours and hours of work. So I'm starting by simply scraping off any underglaze that's on the base. Some underglazes do vitrify, so I do want to make sure that base is clear. I'm using this little bean bag as a support for the vessel. And with this kidney, I am just simply putting some rough marks down so that I can keep the lines somewhat straight. Didn't matter to me too much because I'm doodling. I'm not aiming for accuracy. Trying some of those diamond core bits were really interesting because they were so sharp that they removed clay instantly. Especially this little V-shaped one. It started out with a shallow groove, deepened its groove, and lifted on a shallower groove. So you got a lot of depth with this one. I'm having to hold the blade in place, so I really think I have to figure out tightening up these screws and bolts just to keep them in place. I wanted to then create more depth by using one of the Kempfer tools, and I found this little triangular tip or diamond tip was the really nice one for the shape. So this one didn't take very long at all, and I've just underglazed the rim because I noticed there were some thin spots, and there's a very simple Sgraffito design. Now we're moving on to a much bigger vessel. Same again, I'm cleaning off the base. And I'm trying a few different tools and not finding the satisfaction of getting a deep enough groove with some of those fluting tools. You've really got to find the tools that work for you. The same tools could work for somebody else that might not work for you. I ended up turning the vessel clockwise and anti-clockwise so that I could find it easier on my hands while doing the design. Sometimes propping it up in a glass jar or having it on the beanbag or the banding wheel. I ended up using these little ball tips. I was surprised because I didn't think I would, but they actually made some nice carvings, not too deep. And of course, because they're not a sharp blade, it was a very rounded design. As I had no plan here, I'm working on some kind of spacing. It doesn't always work out equal. And then I'm looking at the negative space and deciding what I want to put in it. This vessel compared to the first is much more decorative. I really wanted to fill every space. I can sometimes ignore the fact that less is more. I often like more is more. Then I went to that lapidary hard pencil, and it really is a sharp tip, but it gave me a nice fine line. And so now I'm realizing with the variety of tools I have, how I can really alter the shape of the line, the depth of the line, and how close the lines can be together. So cross-hatching, if you like. If you look carefully at this design, even though the video is moving fast, you'll see that the base shape is pretty much the same. It's what I call a lazy S. Lazy S's, one beside the other, create this leaf shape, create designs within designs, petal shapes, heart shapes, and really that repeating pattern can be used in so many different ways. that it absolutely is my favorite. I find it very calming and very comforting. Once again, I am adding some black underglaze to finish the rim, and that piece is finished. This one was a little bit more freeing. I didn't put any mark signs down first. I was really using that same lazy S shape, if you can see what I mean there. And I'm using my favorite tool, so I'm very familiar with it. Now, one thing I want to note here is you'll see how I'm holding the rim. And at this point, the rim is not very protected as I'm carving towards the rim. So if you don't know your clay that well, or you're not familiar with this process, you can actually break your rim this way. So be extra careful. Always removing the gribblies, because although they're not dusty and dry when they come off, by the time they're floated around the room, they dry really fast. So I push them all to one side where they can be scooped up safely. I'm switching between the camphor tool, the diamond core tool, and my lapidary, what I call the pencil. Also, it's important to make sure you're sitting in a position and holding the vessel in a position that's comfortable for you. When I'm filming, I can't always do this because I'm always conscious that the camera needs to see more than I do. But I have to say, my neck and shoulders are pretty sore after this. I would work perhaps closer to myself, or at least turn towards myself all the time. Here's that little scratchy tool from Diamond Core. I did figure out how to use it, and now I have to say I am a fan. You don't need all these different tools, one will be enough. I was just fortunate enough to have different ones, which enabled me to play and have a bit of fun. But you can still get lots of depth and lots of texture just by how you're using the one or many tools. I really enjoyed working on this piece. I knew it would take a lot longer, but I gave myself the time to just sit and go with the flow. You don't need to sgraffito every inch of the pot, or every millimeter of the pot in my case. It's just something I really wanted to do. It's the same when I doodle on paper. I really like to fill the space. I get partway through a project and wonder why I chose to fill the space, but it's not long before you're over that hump of wondering and you're back into the joy of creating. Hopefully you can see here with the blend of tools, whether it's the little round ball or this camphor tool that's taking lots away, you can have wider and deeper carving, as well as fine, hardly carved at all. And because the black will show up really well once it's been through the kiln and has a clear glaze over it, all these little details will show up as well. You can also see at this point, the clay is pretty dry. It's not bone dry, but it isn't long before the gribblies have turned to dust. However, if the clay was much wetter than this, all those tiny areas would be sticking to the wet clay. It's a fine balance between not having the gribblies stick to everything and not creating dust. I think it was at this point that I thought I was almost finished, and then realized just how many spaces were still left. Enough that I could have just left them and left more black area, but no, I cleaned up the space and went in for more. I also didn't clean off the underglaze on the base of this one. I'll have to remember that when I put it in the kiln. If it was black engobe, I wouldn't worry at all about cleaning off the base, but with an underglaze, they can sometimes vitrify, so I definitely don't want to leave that there. And that's when I see there's one more big area. Should I leave it
No, I can't leave it. I have to complete it. And one last lick of underglaze, especially because I've been handling that rim a lot, so it started to rub off. And there's the finished piece. I really enjoyed this one, and I actually quite like the end result. You can see not every line is perfect because that's not the point. Working on the plate or bowl, shallow bowl, was a little bit different. I had an idea that I would carve these perfect lines in the back. Well, that lasted all of 2 seconds before they spiraled in all different directions. So I went with the spiral, realizing that just have the tool there and move my hand up and down and fill in the space with spirals. I quite like this look, but as you'll see at the end, it doesn't quite match what I do on the front. Oh well, doodling was never meant to match the couch now, was it? I have to be extra careful of the pressure I'm putting on this because it would be easy to break the rim. I'm doing a much thicker carving down towards the base as I know there's extra clay there. I wish there wasn't, but I'm still struggling to throw bowls that are more even all the way through. Maybe I do it on purpose so they have a heavier, stable base. Ha ha ha. Might be a bit more challenging to see until the pot comes further round, but this is where I've used a deep carving tool, and now I'm going in with that fine scratchy, which is now becoming a favourite, and creating almost this feather-like design. I was thinking it was a bit like wheatgrass in the wind too. Then I remembered there was a camera and I needed to show you what I was doing, so I propped it up on the beanbag in hopes that you'll be able to see more. And although I'm tired and I've been doing this for hours, I decide I should go even smaller details instead of bigger ones. Oh, the things I do to myself. Now I'm turning the banding wheel around and forgetting that the camera doesn't get turned around as well, but be patient, you'll see it as it comes around. The debate what to do next. As soon as you come out of the flow and start to think, you can get yourself into a lot of trouble. So I had to stop thinking, go back to an old faithful, my leaf design. That put me back in the flow pretty fast. And then I was off following whatever my little pen or scratchy pen wanted to do. You can see now why having a good soft brush is so helpful to get the gribblies out of the design. Otherwise you're working in dust and they will actually scratch through the black when you don't want them to. Gone back to my new favourite little scratchy pen. It's a delightful thing. And it's given me that cross-hatching effect that I really want on these leaves. Or are they leaves? Yeah, they're leaves. My original design of having a perfect circles on the back was also going to be a perfect circle around the rim of this pot. As you can see, we decided that was not to be. It's very rare that I actually aim for perfection. Sometimes I crave it, but I don't aim for it. No point being disappointed all the time. Just checking now, are there any more spaces I can fill? And I know I can fill up much more of it, but I'm really working hard not to. Allow it to breathe, Cheryl-Ann, allow it to breathe. Allow it to have space that it needs. Well, soon I'll allow it to breathe. Just a few more, just a little bit more scratching. Oh, it's so yummy scratching through clay. Well, as we come to an end of this, I hope you really enjoyed seeing my Sgraffito technique. Try it for yourself. It doesn't have to be a complex design. It just has to be something you enjoy creating. As I touch up this rim, these are all ready now to dry out, be bisque fired, then glaze fired, and then they'll be shiny, shiny black with bright white showing through. At least that's what I hope. Cheryl-Ann Webster, Sculpting Emotions.